She is.
We are live. And our mics are live. What's up, dude?
How's it going? Got a couple people here.
Yep, Brett's sitting in with us. It's winter time, so we had a movie day today. I had the guys. The first time both of you guys have watched Klunkers.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Do
you like it?
It was really good.
Oh yeah.
It was a really cool perspective just to see how things stayed the same, how things have changed. But it's really cool to just see the foundation of mountain biking as we know it today.
Yeah, that was the movie. I think Klunkers, a film about mountain biking, came out in 2013. And then I think I'd probably seen it like 2016. I think when I tore my ACL rock climbing, and I spent a good amount of time on the couch. So I watched a bunch of mountain bike movies. I fell in love with GMBN with the Dirt Shed show. And then also I probably watched Klunkers. God, dude, when I was actually opening the store, probably 30 times, because that was kind of the inspiration that made me think like, oh, I can open a mountain bike shop. Like this is actually something that's possible, because it had been something, especially, after I rehabbed for my ACL, then I broke my leg. So it was something I'd been kind of ruminating over. And then, if you watch the movie, you'll kind of see, and we'll walk through the movie a little bit and kind of talk about Gary Fisher. And that's why I kind of went back to it this week. I think last week we talked about the impact Specialized is going to have with the direct-to-consumer model that they're going with. And we didn't really touch on any of the positive points and kind of the areas where things are still looking good for mountain biking. So, it made me think about Gary Fisher and his involvement with Trek. And kind of he's been instrumental in mountain biking, and he's still, if you're riding a Trek bike, you're riding a Gary Fisher bike. So he's taken that kind of throughout the years.
Yeah, he still claims the Trek mountain bikes as his bikes, even though they still do not carry the Gary Fisher name like they once did.
Yep. So we'll jump into it, and I think it's important to note, this movie, like I said, came out in 2013. They kind of talked to everybody, but there's differing views on where mountain biking really started. Here in the United States, just after the Civil War, there was the 25th Infantry that went from Montana to St. Louis, or at least an attempt was made. They had wooden wheels.
Wow.
It was ridiculous.
How do you keep those true?
Yeah, it was like 1897, something along those lines. But anyhow, it was an all-black unit. They had James Moss. It was like Colonel James Moss by the end, but really kind of important people. And it happened about 30 years after the Civil War. So kind of a really cool documentary if you go back and watch some stuff on them. That was like the first time where they they didn't make it. Of course not, dude. They had wooden wheels. They had one bike mechanic from St. Louis. I forget his name. But they brought him on the trip, and he had all of his tools and everything, and just repaired everybody's bikes. There was 30 of them. It took them a couple of weeks. They did, they went pretty far as you could expect to go with wooden wheels.
Yeah, definitely does not.
Yeah, dude, the Army thought like, this is great. They're quiet. You don't have to feed them like horses. So like they, the United States Army was really testing out to see if that was going to be viable. They decided it wasn't.
Yeah. Bikes break when you're mountain biking.
They did not go with
still
that.
Happening today.
Yeah.
Never figured that out. Still working on it.
So yeah, and then when we opened, we didn't get the kind of one of the big three brands like we wanted to. The one we had been looking at, which was Giant at the time. So in my kind of search for bike brands, I really hadn't even considered Trek at the time, for whatever reason. But I came across Marin Bikes. They're out of Marin County, California. So that's where all this kind of takes place. I think the first guy who was like actually mountain biking was like 1950. It was a guy named John Scott, which is interesting.
Okay.
But that was in the 1950s. He was doing that. I forget where he was from, but he was the only guy doing it. So like he didn't have any friends. Like he was a road biker, but he started running like 700C with like 44 tires or something on it, whatever he was doing. But yeah, nobody else joined along and got hype about it, so it kind of died off. And then in like Crested Butte, there was guys like the late 60s that did it as well. And then kind of late 70s is when Marin County really kicked off.
Yeah, it's really cool listening to the movie, and all the towns, all the little places that they're talking about just happen to be names of all of the Marin bikes. So it's really cool that when they mention a name like, oh, I've heard of that before, that's still an important place in mountain bike history.
Dude, I got a dope video that we had a dealer event in Marin County. I have mentioned it on one of the streams, so I won't go into detail about it, but they rented out a hotel for us, and they didn't, like, we had demo days. So like we went to like Mount Tam. Interestingly enough, so mountain biking started in Marin County. They're very like anti-mountain bike.
Really?
Yeah,
Wonder why.
Trails are super restrictive.
Yeah, they talked about that in the movie a little bit.
Did they?
Yeah. Well, they never actually talked about the restrictions they put on, but they did mention that when they started mountain biking, it was before they had restrictions on the trails.
Yeah.
Because no one knew that they were even doing it.
Yeah, San Francisco's a bike friendly area. Like like the ferries and stuff all have like bike carriers, so everybody's riding bikes around. Just they're very limited on their trails and that. So we rode at like a Boy Scout camp while we were there, but they didn't leave us at the hotel with any bikes. So if you wanted to go anywhere, everybody flew in. There's people from Canada, whatever else. They left us with one Stinson, which is my favorite bike from Marin. Probably it's their cruiser bike. It's dope. It's super cool. It's a 1x9 now with a clutch. It's sick. I put Minions on mine and rode like Greensfelder. Where else did we ride? Castlewood.
So what put a stop to that? I feel like there was a funny story behind that bike.
Oh, the Stinson Crit. So yeah, everybody partied that night all together, and it was like a hotel with a courtyard in the middle. And they left us with the Stinson. Like there was doors on both sides of the hotel rooms. So they put pallets over the beds. So there's a course that went through the hotel room into the courtyard over a side. Everybody crashed at the end. We have a video of it on our Instagram page from like 2018. I not digging back for it, but no, it was great. It was a Stinson Crit. So ever since then, it's just a really nice bike. Double wall rims, sealed bearings. Like I said, now it has a 1x9 set micro shifts with the clutch on it. So
it's a real fun bike. If you're looking to buy,
it's got disc brakes now.
Yeah, if you're looking to buy a cruiser bike for your wife or girlfriend or something, it's a really cool bike. It's got a mountain bike drivetrain, really burly wheels on it, so you can really have some fun on it if you want.
Yeah, it's tied between I would say at this point, the Stinson's my favorite bike.
It's a little fun.
Yep.
Pretty cool.
Yep. You guys just got Elroy's.
Yep.
What do you think of your Elroy, Brad?
Oh, dude, I love it. I put some Doom bars. There's a dude in Albuquerque, New Mexico, who will he'll just straight 22.2 diameter tubing, and you'll bend it custom for you. And then I got the Maxis,
the Ardens
on there with the gum wall.
So I feel bad now. I feel like we should actually talk about this movie.
Oh, we should.
It is so awesome. It is a dope movie. You should go and watch it. And it's interesting to me because I think it really mirrors, and it's why I watched it so much, like in the process of opening up the shop, because it really comforted me to be like, okay, this is going to work. Because it really mirrors what's kind of the bike scene today. Like, I don't think anything's really changed. It's super interesting to see these guys from, the 1970s till now, and what they've been able to do. And if you get out to Marin County, like Joe Breeze, his wife still runs the museum. I think Charlie Kelly, his wife also helps run the museum out there. But it's pretty dope because essentially Gary Fisher and Charlie Kelly started the mountain bike company with Tom Ritchie. And those guys are all still, involved in the bike community. WTB, there was I guess he do you remember the guy from WTB?
I don't remember his name, but I remember
Charlie Cunningham, something Cunningham. Anyhow, he, one of the original guys from WTB, Wilderness Trail Bicycles. He was like customizing parts kind of in the early 70s to get the guys riding. And then in 1977, they Joe Breeze produced the first mountain bike frame, welded it together.
It looks pretty different than what we would consider a mountain bike.
So he made 10 of them. So before that, they rode like cruiser bikes. They modified parts. They used like, parts from like motorcycle brakes and just all kinds of weird random stuff. They had the repack races because they were using coaster brakes at first, and they'd have to repack the bearings after a race. A bunch of wild stuff. And then kind of 1977, they would be able to order parts and they'd kind of modify things down. Essentially, Joe Breeze made 10 frames. And then they'd they'd get parts from their local bike dealer, kind of file them down, make them suit to work the bike, put them on the bike, and then race them down a gravel hill, essentially. That's
cool.
And that's how, I don't know, they have a lot of fire roads in Marin County. Like, you just pedaled up a fire road and back down. And then like everywhere you went, there's so much traffic up there. So like the trails were all like an hour apart, 2 hours. Like you had to go so far to get to anything. Or it seemed like maybe you didn't go so far, but it took a long time. It made me feel how lucky we are here in St. Louis. Like just here in Eureka, we've got the Eureka Mountain Bike Park in our parking lot here. We've got, Zombie. We've got Bluffview, Greensfelder, Chubb. And then that's all within 10 minutes of us. And those are all 3 separate trail systems that are 20-ish miles each, So,
It's really cool that we have a lot of biking in this area. And in the movie, it really talks about how after the ride, they would ride through the town. They obviously have to get to the trails, and they're not just going to take their Tacoma with their bike in the back. So it's really cool that people are riding around, and we'll start to see some more of that around here soon.
I'd considered taking notes before we did this. That would have been a good idea.
Yeah, should have been a little prepared for the pop quiz, but we'll be fine.
Yeah, most interesting thing about early mountain biking is the geometry, because those first cruiser bikes that they had have a whole lot more in common with what we would consider a modern mountain bike, like last 5 years at least, than every bike from then in between, because initially they had sub 70-degree head angles, low bottom brackets, and then once you got into the 80s,
26-inch wheels.
They went 26-inch wheels. All of the bottom brackets got really high, the front end got really steep, and they didn't figure out that it's way more fun to ride a bike down a hill with a really slack front end.
Yeah.
Until like maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Pretty cool to see how everything just always comes full circle. It'll be interesting to see how that trend continues throughout the years.
Well, it's interesting. They went with the 26-inch wheel size because it was the most available. So that they tried out 29ers. There was only like one company in like Norway or something. I don't know, somewhere in Europe that did not have, or that made a wider, like a 700 by 44 or 700 by 53 or something along those lines. And it was like $120 for a set of them. Whereas the 26-inch by 2.125s or whatever were $11 a piece. So they went with 26. But Gary Fisher said in 1980, he like timed himself and whatever else, and the 29er was 5 to 10% faster on the trails he was riding.
That's a pretty big difference.
It's pretty much just like straight down a gravel hill.
Also, a lot harder to keep a 29-inch wheel straight, especially in the 80s.
Yeah, sure. Rim technology really probably wasn't there at the time. And that's an interesting thing too with Gary Fisher. So a big reason, so like the stump jumper was 1979, I think. Joe Breeze made those first bikes in 1977. And then Gary Fisher and Charlie Kelly teamed up with Tom Ritchie to design their own frame. They wanted to do a little bit different than Joe Breeze. Joe Breeze and Gary Fisher were a little bit competitive. They were both road racers, so Gary Fisher got kicked out of road racing though because his hair was too long.
I don't think that's the official reason. They mentioned some. He was
smoking combustibles also.
That's what they said, didn't they? Yeah. So he got in trouble for those things, got kicked out of road racing. And that's when, and mountain biking was essentially just a party, dude. They would push their bikes up top of Mount Tam, and then they would just fly back down. At the bottom, there'd be a barbecue, there'd be a band.
Just a bunch of guys who like to ride bikes, just
And
hanging
girls.
out, having fun, and girls.
One of
having
those
fun.
first 10 bikes, one of Joe Breeze's first 10 bikes went, I forget the lady's name, but it did go to a lady. And like they did a news report. So if you look up like Klunkers on YouTube or something, you'll see like a lady go down and the bike flies at the camera. That's the chick.
Nice.
Yeah, dude. She was awesome.
That's
So one of the
cool.
first 10 bikes, Gary Fisher didn't even get one of the first 10 bikes.
Wow.
I think it pissed him off. I think that's why he started his own bike company called Mountain Bike. That was the name of his company, Mountain Bike.
Well, they said
Pretty
in the movie that that he didn't want one of the first 10 ones because he wanted to do his own thing.
Yeah.
That's what he said.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Do you think it's because he just didn't get one and then he got mad and then was like, I'm building my own? Or do you think like he just was like, you're not doing this right, you're not doing that right?
Oh, maybe a little column A, column B. I don't know.
I feel like maybe we
I think if we would have, I wish the Joe Breeze was the one that they got mass produced. To be honest, though, it looked a little bit more fun to me. Had a slacker front end at least.
yeah, and had a weird like extra down tube in the middle, a middle tube.
Pretty weird. Extra stiffness.
Oh,
That's what you want.
interesting. What else did you find interesting about the movie? So they did that, and then 1979, Gary Fisher sent a bike to Specialized, and that's how they came up with the stump jumper. So that's interesting. And Gary Fisher did that because he wanted mass-produced frames, because he wanted to send bikes out to the masses.
He just wanted to get everyone he possibly could on a bicycle, and a lot of people say that's kind of where things started to change.
Yeah, and that's a cool thing. Like, I don't think if Gary Fisher had other motivations other than growing the sport and sharing it with as many people as he did, you know, that it may not have taken off the way it did.
Yeah.
Or I'm sure it wouldn't.
His
Because,
the documentary, the video, it talks about how he was kind of a hippie capitalist. He didn't set out to make money for himself. He just set out to grow the sport. And if he made money to create his business and keep it going, that was great. So it's really cool to see how that's turned out, and how for some bike companies, it's kind of somewhere.
Yep. So yeah, and he talks about it in Klunkers how, you know, he sent Specialized, Mike, whoever he is that ran it at the time, he sent him a frame in like 77 or 78 or whatever. And I think by 79 is when the stump jumper was released by them. So yeah, pretty cool. And he knew, of course, that he would look at it, design his own, and then get it, you know, to where they could mass produce frames over in China. So they did that. And then once Gary Fisher wanted to kind of grow his company, he went over and talked with Shimano, and he kind of, you know, he spilled the beans, or he essentially told Shimano, here's what you need to do. Shimano jumped on with them. In exchange, he got guaranteed he was going to get bike parts first, and that they would extend a line of credit to him so that he could build a bunch of bikes. Because they went from like the first year they sold 100 bikes, second year they sold 1,000. So I mean, it was growing infinitely, and they're just making frames, you know, in their garages. So I think Tom Ritchie got to the point to where he was making 50 frames in 3 weeks.
No, I think it was like 500. I think.
No, 50 in 3 weeks.
50. 50. I can't imagine doing it by myself.
Yeah, when they first started, I think he, you know, like the first 100 or so he built, those were taking him like a week a bike. And then by the time he got so efficient, that's why like Ritchie parts now are so, you know, why you're going to pay extra for them, because they're no joke. Like that dude's serious business. But anyhow, and then Gary Fisher would, you know, get the frames from Tom Ritchie, put the parts on that he got from, you know, the local shops. And then eventually he was getting his, you know, after kind of in the early 80s, so like 81, 82-ish, you know, once Specialized had the stump jumper out, that's when, you know, they made that transition to getting the mass produced bikes, and Tom Ritchie kind of kept doing his own thing.
Pretty cool to see.
But yep. So yeah, I think the important takeaway here, like the point I was getting at with that was, you know, Gary Fisher kind of went over, you know, and kind of gave the playbook to Shimano on, hey, here's what we need. Here's, what we're looking for. And then Shimano obviously, has stayed on top of the game ever since then. And then, Gary Fisher had his bikes. Yeah, dude. And it's so funny because it's just like at the mountain bike shed, like when I tried naming the shop the mountain bike shed, everybody was like, do not do that. That's dumb. Nobody knows what that is. You're never going to be able to sell bikes. Nobody knows what a mountain bike is. Like, why would you say that? It's generic. Don't. So in 1983, his company was called Mountain Bike. So he dropped his trademark or patent or whatever that was on it because it was too generic, and he changed it to Gary Fisher Mountain Bikes. So when he did that, he kind of lost that name or whatever it may be. But yeah, he did it because his lawyer told him it was just a generic, stupid name. And I was like, oh, it's so funny. Like when I opened the shop, everybody was like, do not name your shop Mountain Bike Shed. And I was like, I don't think you understand what I'm trying to do here. Like, it's not about selling the most bikes I can. It's about telling everybody mountain biking is a thing and like introducing that to everybody and kind of putting it in their, just putting it out there. And it worked out. We were able to get a park built, and that's one thing with Gary Fisher. Like he kind of started this mountain bike movement and he continues to be in it, through today. So Gary Fisher Trek bought Gary Fisher bikes and Gary Fisher, came on with Trek in the early 90s. And that's why we kind of said earlier on that Gary Fisher, essentially if you're riding a Trek mountain bike, you're riding a Gary Fisher mountain bike. He oversees that whole operation and kind of the strategic planning. So for us, it's super hopeful because we know that, you can see, I think Gary Fisher is very motivated in seeing the sport continue to grow. So we know, with Trek, he's good friends with JB, or John Burke, who runs Trek. His father started Trek. So they're, very good friends. They've been friends, Gary Fisher says since the 70s. They originally had met. So, Gary Fisher was super stoked to sign on with Trek, and, they dropped his, like every bike box we get says Gary Fisher on it. Every single Trek bike we get, it also says Electra, but it says Gary Fisher. They haven't produced a Gary Fisher bike since like 2010-ish or something. When did they stop making Gary Fishers?
I think at least 15 is far back. Probably further back than that, though.
Yeah. So
either way, it's really cool to see a company that still has the philosophy of just getting people out on bikes and having as many people on bikes as possible, instead of a certain company who just wants to see as many people on their bike as possible. It's really a big difference.
Yep.
So it's really cool to see Trek still having that good.
Yeah, it's nice to know he's at the helm, and Trek's a company in Waterloo, Wisconsin, and I got that sense, when I went to Trek World back before COVID started. John Burke spoke there, and I really got a sense that he really cared about the biking community. Like it didn't seem like he was just like, here's how you make the most money, and here's how you sell the most bikes of mine. It was, here's how you create the best experience to make people fall in love with cycling. And that's one thing they talk about. And, and one reason why, I think mountain biking's, it's so great compared to like road riding or whatever it may be, is it's more of an available thing. So like, you can just jump on a mountain bike and go get in the woods, and it's a good time. Like, let's go too crazy with it. You know how much the first mountain bike cost? Gary Fisher's first mountain bike? $1,300.
That's expensive.
$1,300.
What would that be with inflation today? You have any
idea? Dude, I would say, so that would have been 1979 to now. That would be at least $6,000. It'd be a $6,000 bike.
That's pretty pricey. I mean, when you think of it, it was all custom. It was all bespoke stuff. I mean, the price fit the bill. Is Brett going to look up the conversion?
Yeah, I'm looking it up right
Good.
now.
What was the year? 1977.
Oh, Brett, you could be our Jamie from now on. Yeah, dude, that would be dope. We're from now on.
It's about $9,300.
$9,300.
Dude. So yeah.
So when you say these bikes are expensive,
yep. Yep. It's interesting. We're only 22 minutes in. I was going to pre-record this. I feel like I should have now. But no, it is interesting. And it's funny. I listened to an interview leading up to this with Gary Fisher, and he kind of talked about when he sold the company, and then kind of what he's done since. And he said that whenever he kind of gets fielded the question about like, oh, it sucks that your bikes are gone or whatever, that's his big point, is like, I've been designing these bikes for the last 23 years for truck. So I don't know.
It's cool that he still feels that they're his bikes, even though they don't have his name on them. He still feels like he's very much involved in the design process and is very influential on the bikes, but he's not trying to gain anything from it. So he doesn't really care that his name's not out there.
What's up with that sticker, dude?
Which sticker?
Come from?
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's a custom.
What the
Yeah.
heck, dude?
Every bike with RockShox comes with 2 stickers, and it's time for some arts and crafts.
I see what you did there.
Mm-hmm.
That's very clever.
Yeah. If you know, you know. If you don't, you can.
Yeah, you can swing by the shop and take a look at what we're looking at.
It's pretty funny. There's a couple hidden around here. Usually, I think all of them are in the back, other than that one. But
There's a
cool
ton on
ones.
the trash can.
Oh, because you
But
just
yeah.
kept putting C's over everything.
Yeah. So as you can see, nothing's really changed. We're just still out here trying to have a good time.
Yeah, dude. It's cool. I think that movie, I think it's worth watching. It's interesting, and it's a fun movie that kind of follows along on things, but it's kind of the same stuff we're doing today. So it's very relevant, which is interesting. I don't know, bro. What are your thoughts?
You have some real world kind of clunking experience.
Oh, I did, yeah. I've ridden coaster brake mountain bike from the 80s.
You've had
Pretty dope.
that was
highly
kind of your
recommend.
big thing. Yeah.
Uh,
Mountain biking on the coaster brake.
Got an old Schwinn that I threw a 29er on the front of, and set up single speed with rear brake only, which will eventually be a coaster mountain bike again.
But yeah, you've ridden Zombie on a single speed coaster brake bike, right?
Yeah.
How was that? Did you feel a little old school or?
A lot old school, yeah. Just it's really weird because
You can't stop.
you can't stop. You hit a downhill section and you're just kind of at the speed you start. Like once you get speed going, you're like, well, I can kind of slow down maybe, but you just have to send it. And that's just, it's been painted over in the Klunkers movie. But there's, and then I eventually did just blow straight through that hub after like probably 10 rides.
So yeah, paying homage to repack, having to repack your hub after every race. Pretty cool.
All right, I think we'll end it here.
Now
I think that's all
talking
to say. Go watch the friggin' movie. It's awesome.
Yeah,
So
pretty
dope.
cool.
Put a
99.
coaster brake on the back of your bike. 10
Yeah.
out of 10.
And maybe we'll rename this podcast or possibly delete it immediately. but yeah, maybe in the future we'll actually take some notes and then maybe do a proper walkthrough of this video. I don't know. Maybe this was informative. I don't know. Gary Fisher's dope though. Look up some videos on him. He'll get you hyped about mountain biking.
Yeah, it's really cool to see. When you watch the movie, there's a bunch of little quotes, and we couldn't really go over all the quotes in this podcast, but if you go out and watch it, you'll really be able to see those little quotes that you'll still find very relevant to mountain biking today.
Yep. All right. See you guys.